Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Tuesday, the 26th of November, 2019. And we're having a discussion with controversially Greg on the subject of diamonds. We ask Greg's expertise in this field, where and how diamonds are mined, their value as an investment, cartels, pricing, alternatives, and finally whether gold and silver stackers should consider buying any. So let's listen to the discussion, and at its conclusion, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this channel, not forgetting to press the bell sign so that you are notified of videos as and when they are published. Greg, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today we're going to talk about diamonds. Now, before we do so, and for the benefit of our listeners, and especially those who perhaps do not know anything or little about you, why, before we discuss this subject, should you be in any way regarded as any sort of authority on the subject of diamonds as an investment or as a precious stone?
I've always taken an interest in diamonds, never an interest in purchasing them, but I've been into diamond mines in Africa. Someone I was relatively friendly with had one of the most prestigious cutting works in the world, and his family was very involved in diamonds. I've been into the safes at Swakopmund, which is probably the biggest holding of diamonds in the world, if we're talking diamonds in the rough and quantities of ungraded diamonds. I've watched grading, I've watched cutting, and basically I've followed diamonds with some interest because they are literally an interesting market in the way it is run as a market, and the way it is, or should I say they are vended, and the structure surrounding diamonds, including the cartel structure of it. I trust that will be sufficient. I'm no great expert on them. I merely have rather more exposure to them at various different levels than most people.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, one overriding question, I suppose, that most people would ask or consider is, are diamonds a good investment?
I am very dubious of diamonds as an investment per se for a number of reasons. They're very much a cartelled price structure that is under attack from various third world countries, Sierra Leone, to mention one of the large so-called attackers of the diamond industry, with blood diamonds, as they're called, i.e. diamonds that are worked, areas that are worked, that produce diamonds hugely by children and people on worse than slave labor conditions, because in various areas of Africa there is no employer who is a greater slave driver than an African. So that's one danger of them. Mm-hmm. You're never sure of the ethical nature or lack thereof of the diamonds you're buying. Also, increasingly, there are not just industrial diamonds, which used to be the term for all the little offcuts that could be used in industrial processes, like diamond-tipped drills and the like, but also nowadays it is in fact possible to manufacture a diamond and effectively grow one in a laboratory. This will be increasingly the source of diamonds in the future, although it can be argued that diamonds are possibly not as rare as broken bottles. When you go to the storage of uncut diamonds and you note the interest in method of cooperation between such sources, great sources of diamonds as South Africa and Russia, where organizations like De Beers agree to let a given quantity of diamonds onto the market in order to maintain the price. And Russia goes along with this as well, because diamonds are a very good source of income for the Soviet Union. They also have some massive diamond works in northern Russia that are consequentially inputting diamonds into the marketplace, but very much on an agreement with South Africa as to the quantities that are allowed out in order to maintain the price.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned cartels. Would you like to just briefly explain how these operate?
Basically, the diamond producers, and when I say producers, I mean those who mine them and produce them in quantities, they agree at the top end of the structure that they will allow a certain amount of diamonds out. One of them will let out X thousand carats, and the other will let out an agreed amount in order not to destabilize the price. Diamonds as an investment, they're a strong price to buy. They're not easy to sell. Yes, you can get a return on a few £1,000s worth of diamond. However, one should learn the cautionary tale from Richard Burton, the actor, who you may recall when he was married to Elizabeth Taylor, bought her what is in slang terms called a kanaka, a large and ostentatious diamond. And as I recall, he paid £1.5 million for it. It could have been more, but it's going back a few years. And after Richard Burton had died, Elizabeth Taylor decided eventually to sell the ring, and she put it on the market. Since some years had elapsed, and she hoped it would have a profit. This was the diamond that was purchased for her with great promises of funding health services in Botswana. You may recall, it was put on the market in New York, I believe, and nobody was taking it. So it was put on the market, taken off the market for a short while and put back on at a reduced rate, and it still didn't sell. And eventually, after something like 2 or 3 offers at auction, it didn't sell at 600,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it had more than halved in price. And the De Beers rep at the auction was asked by a journalist, "You sold this stone for over $1.5 million. Why would you not buy it back in now that it's on the market for 600,000? And the De Beers rep said to the journalist, "De Beers is in the business of selling diamonds, not buying them," which I think speaks volumes about the danger of investing in diamonds. They're very nice. If you can derive a usage from them, that is absolutely great as an engagement ring, or as set into an eternity ring or the like. Jewellery that a lady may wish to wear, I personally would not wish to take it beyond that. And if I was investing lots of money, I would rather buy lots of items that were of a price that would sell as individual rings, rather than buying ever bigger or ever more expensive.
Well, interestingly, on that note, on the few occasions that I've purchased diamond jewellery for a loved one, what I've noticed is that it has been cheaper for me to have it specially made and designed in, say, Hong Kong, than it is to buy off the shelf in the United Kingdom. Now, what would you say was the prime reason for that, and how can that actually happen?
You're looking at the jewellery end, retail, with insurance and the like, as anything up to 500% profit on actual outlay for the wholesale jeweller. Yes, of course, if you become to some extent your own wholesale jeweller and buy a stone, and you have the expertise to buy a stone and know its quality and be competent to check its weight and be certain that you're not buying zirconium or manufactured diamond, of course that's the way to do it. But if you buy a big enough box of nuts and bolts, you can make your own car too.
Okay, so on that note, someone who heeds your caution about buying diamonds as an investment, or rather not buying them for investment purposes, but someone decides they wish to purchase some diamond jewellery, in terms of the diamond itself, what aspects of the diamond should they actually look out for?
I think firstly, but they've got to look out for clarity and colour.
Mm-hmm.
A brilliant white is always considered saleable. They've got to look out for no particles in it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's basically a carbon stone, but the last thing you want in it is little flecks of black carbon,
Mm-hmm.
which are very common in diamonds. You must decide what cutting you want. Do you want a brilliant cut, or do you want a rose cut, or a square cut? There are so many varieties, and when working on a sizable and notable stone, the cutter will take the diamond in the raw and will live with that diamond on his cutting desk for 3, 6, 12 months before he makes his first strike to cut it, because he is working out in his head, based on his expertise, what will give the best cut diamond at the end of the process, what will give the most usable offcuts, what will be marketable that is taken off of that main stone. And he will probably even have a setting in mind when he sets out to cut the stone. It's not a simple business. And buying and moving diamonds around the world is, again, cartelled. It is, to a great extent, handled by 1 or 2 families worldwide, where you may well have the patriarch in South Africa. He may have a son who takes the stones overseas and provides them in parcels to cousins in Antwerp, Hatton Garden, and New York, and they will then be passed to trusted vendors to take to show the diamond buyers. It is a very closed shop.
So going by carat alone, because a lot of people are hypnotized by the number of carats a certain diamond possesses, that alone is what you're saying is not sufficient.
That is definitely not sufficient. I think if you go back a few years and you go into somewhere like Velkom in South Africa on a Friday afternoon and watch what are called the tannies, the aunties in the supermarket, walking around with curlers in their hair because they're going out that night, and huge diamonds on every finger. They are the ones who are earning the big money in the mines, the wives of shotsmen, because the shotsman is the biggest earner. He may have no taste in diamonds, but they have to look good and be large for those he gives them to. He's earning his money by placing 10-foot drill holes in rock and knowing where to place them, because he's paid on how many tons of rock he brings down in the mine in a single blast. So his skill is hardly in delicate matters like the fine cutting of diamonds. And you see in South Africa, in towns like that, you see heavy set gold with huge square diamonds. But when you actually look at the diamonds from organizations that supply them, like Stearns, you'll find that many of those diamonds are of lesser value when in the hands of an expert, because they have flaws in them that are well concealed.
Okay, for the benefit of those who perhaps know very little about diamonds, and to a degree, apart from buying them for people, that partially includes me, how are these things mined? What are the sort of consequences and problems associated with mining of diamonds?
At one time, I can't give you the accurate figures, in Swakopmund area, it was barbed wired off big areas, and up to half a mile of concrete was poured, half a mile square of concrete was poured on the surface to stop people picking up diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
because they really weren't that rare. You go into the safes, which are in old workings, you go in and you get into a lift and go down into the workings where they've followed a pipe, as it's called, a diamond pipe, which are the old vents for volcanoes that poured out the magma. You go down in there with the lights off so that you can't tell how many stoops you've passed.
Mm-hmm.
For security reasons. The lift comes to a halt, it's turned manually by the liftsman, and you step out and the lights have turned on into a passageway maybe 30 feet long and 8 foot by 8 foot, and there are sacks in the corner, Hessian sacks piled up, and all of these sacks are full of uncut diamonds. There may well be somebody working in that stoop who will be sitting on a stool, sliding up and down a drawer that's pulled out of the wall on one side across to the wall on the other, and he is grading the stones in that drawer, and there will be 50, 60 drawers like that to go with 10 or 15 Hessian sacks full of diamonds.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is it cheaper to mine diamonds than it is to mine gold and silver, for example?
When you can pick them up off the surface, it's much cheaper. When you're following a pipe deep into the ground on a big working, that is becoming fairly expensive. Bear in mind that the largest man-made hole on the planet is Kimberley Kloof, and there is always the story of the owner of Kimberley Kloof. It was a farm like Kimberley in South Africa, and when diamonds were discovered in Southwest Africa, because farming was a pretty hard game, he sold his farm to go and prospect for diamonds in Southwest Africa, and nobody knows what his name was. He hasn't been heard of since. However, the person who bought his Kimberley farm, which had a huge outcrop of rock on it, a type of rock which is very common in South Africa, which is a volcanic plug, the remains of an old volcano where the soil has washed away from the copy, as they are called locally. He found that this was a diamond-bearing copy, and having found one, it then became the largest hole on the planet that was man-made as it was mined to extract the diamonds from the whole rock core of that volcano.
I remember watching a program not that long ago, and I think actually it might even be available on YouTube, where a diamond expert was actually saying that now they can produce diamonds in a laboratory virtually to the same standard, if not even a higher standard, than that which you can mine, all for a fraction of the cost. I don't know if you've seen that program or heard of that, but do you have any comments in relation to it?
I've been aware of that for quite some time, which is why you really want to be able to buy diamonds with somebody who you really trust, because you can do exactly the same thing with pearls. Wild pearls found in, for instance, off the coast of Bahrain are worth a lot of money, good ones. You can make pearls in oysters just the same way. And in fact, I believe the largest producer in the world is in Japan, and they make pearls by putting an irritant into an oyster and leaving it for X number of years. But if you plan on recovering it, you have to make sure it has a pretty good diet and remains in one place and has a fairly stress-free life. This leads to a pearl which is just too damn perfect. And somebody who knows their pearls will look at it and say that is manufactured. Just the same as freshwater pearls that also come in large quantities from Japan are grown in shellfish in fresh water, but they're misshapen, random shapes. They're quite attractive, actually, but they're not good pearls. Diamonds are much the same. A good diamond buyer will look at that manufactured stone and it is just too perfect, and it is not worth as much as the fractionally imperfect one that is genuine.
Okay, now many of us have heard of, shall we say, alternative diamonds, such as zirconia, which is a naturally occurring element, and something which is made in a factory, really, cubic zirconia. Would you like to just give us a brief indication of how those two items differ and what properties they have that persuade some people that they could actually be purchasing a diamond?
I would say that almost nobody without training would know the difference between cubic zirconia and like commodities and diamonds. They're not as hard, do not take as good a cutting. However, on an everyday basis, I defy 99.9% of mankind to tell the difference. It glitters. It's pretty, it's on a lady's hand, and it depends on her deportment how valuable it is and how valuable it was to somebody who gave it to her. I have been to the Friends in Johannesburg with my girlfriend of the time some 30 odd years ago, and we've been going out to the theatre and for dinner. And he said, this is my chance to show off my art to other people. And we'd been into his safe in the house, which is 2 stories down, cut in rock under the house. His father owned the house before him, and we've gone out. He's dressed my girlfriend in jewellery, and we've gone out for dinner and to the theatre, and in one of his half a dozen cars for the evening with his wife, who was equally clad in diamonds. And I remember saying to him on one occasion, she's wearing these, what's the value? He's probably about 12 million.
Did he let you keep them, Greg?
Unfortunately not.
So he's not that good a friend then?
No. But you're talking of millions of pounds worth in a corsage of diamonds, a necklace, earrings and a brooch, exquisitely made. You're talking an awful lot of money.
Now, on that note, when one considers any form of diamond jewellery, what sort of quality gold, I'm assuming, or platinum, well, we won't mention platinum, but if they have a gold setting, what would be the sort of recommended gold setting for, say, a necklace or a ring or something of that nature?
Personally, I would never suggest somebody goes above 18 carat.
Right.
And the reason for that is you start going above 18 carat and it is getting softer and softer. Clasps that hold the stone will be that little bit weaker. And also bearing in mind that a platinum is usually the closest to white, it is often seen, if you look closely, that a diamond is set in platinum in a gold ring. The reason being that platinum is that bit harder than pure gold, and it can be polished as a white metal to reflect light back through the stone. Gold is not as successful. And if you look at most settings of good diamonds or of very small diamonds, they will be set in an area of white metal.
Greg, we're running out of time. This is quite a fascinating subject. Is there anything perhaps we haven't covered that you think may be of benefit to our listeners?
I think one thing is the availability of diamonds from places like the Congo and Sierra Leone. Bear in mind that these diamonds have caused wars. There is almost continuous warfare in the Congo. Much of that is based on the extraction of diamonds, and the wars in Sierra Leone seem to be fairly related to diamonds. hence they're called blood diamonds.
Mhm.
And to go off at a slight tangent, but with a similar example, some years ago I was in Manaus in the Amazon, not on the Amazon, just up from the Amazon on the Rio Negro. Manaus made its money originally out of rubber. It was one of the few sources of rubber until we, the British, just happened to acquire some rubber plants and set them to work in Malaysia, because that was the source of the rubber trees and the rubber industry in Malaysia. And in Manaus, it is also a center of emeralds. And when one inquires as to where the emeralds come from, it's very difficult to actually find out, because the prospectors go out and find the emeralds. And you speak to the dealers or those in the know about the dealers, and you say, how can you tell if somebody's a prospector? Well, the first comment is they're probably not in Manaus. They're out prospecting. Yeah, and what happens after that? Well, they try to come back in with their parcel of emeralds that they've found, but unfortunately most of them are killed probably 50 miles from Manaus, because there's a ring of bandits there who steal diamonds from prospectors. And they try to get into Manaus with them, but there's another crew of bandits who are better armed and more ruthless, who are 10 miles out.
Right.
So you're probably 4 deaths away from the person who found it.
So it's a dangerous occupation then.
Oh, yes, and diamonds can be the same. And
Greg?
one of the biggest things to fear in South Africa used to be the government, because the government was so involved in the finance side of diamonds and controlling prices along with De Beers, that the sentencing for IDB, as it was called, illegal or illicit diamond buying, was pretty crippling.
Greg, thank you very much. Would I be right in assuming then, for the benefit of our listeners, that you suggest they stick to stacking gold and silver rather than perhaps foraying into the diamond sphere?
The only people who are going to buy diamonds from you are diamond dealers. I would say you can be pretty certain that a diamond dealer will know more about diamonds than you do. If you want to buy diamonds for particularly good friends of a certain persuasion, I would suggest that thee and me and the man in the street tends to look towards auctions, because if nothing else, there is always an underbidder.
Greg, fascinating subject, as always. I've no doubt there will be some things that someone will pick up on, and we welcome that. And if we've missed something that's obvious, then please point it out.
I never claim to be an expert in anything. I do believe that I can help stimulate people to think about it, discuss it, and learn more for themselves if they're interested. Therefore, what I'm saying is always a pleasure to chat, but please don't take it as any kind of financial advice.
Well, I have to admit, in my 40 years of giving financial advice, I've never once recommended someone purchase diamonds. I will admit to that. Greg, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We hope you have found this video interesting and informative. And if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer: Illuminati Silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.